Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Wealth Conversation podcast with me, Tsitsi. I guide high-achieving women on their journey to build lasting wealth so they can prepare for an abundant future in every area of their life. I hope that today's episode will help you to transform your relationship with money so you can make the choices that will enable you to create the opportunities and lasting wealth that you desire. Let's get straight into this week's episode. Hey there, it's good to have you back with us. So I know you've been listening to this podcast every single week and that you've been taking in the wealth of knowledge from all the guests that have been on the podcast so far. But a lot of you have told me that you haven't taken any action, mainly because you're not sure where to start. And I get it, because I've been there before. The good news is that I can definitely help you get clear on the 3 steps that you can take straight away to create the solid foundation that you desire. So head to the show notes and click the link to book a Power Hour session with me. There's definitely never been a better time to become the designer of your financial future. For many, buying a home will be the most significant financial commitment that they will make. And so it is important to have the support of the right advisors when navigating the mortgage process. My guest, mortgage advisor Sam Cattell, has over 20 years' experience in the property industry. Sam will be sharing how she supports her clients as they embark on the journey to buying a home that is sacred and meaningful. Welcome, Sam, to the Wealth Conversation podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's so good to have you. Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Sam Cattell, and I'm the owner and the founder of Mindful Mortgages. I'm also a mortgage advisor, and I'm a mum, wife, nature lover, animal lover, and a massive tea drinker.
I love that.
Sounds better than mortgage advisor.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, tea drinker, better than mortgage advisor. Now, Sam, what was your reason for stepping into the world of mortgages and setting up your own mortgage business?
Yeah, I love thinking back about the journey. I mean, I've been in the industry for 20 years now, which is quite shocking when you think about it. But I started at 17 because I just loved houses and I loved looking around them and helping people buy them. So I started as an estate agent, and really, if it was just for the houses, I would still be doing that. But there was probably a few extra things that didn't suit my personality. So I moved into mortgages at 20. I did it for 13 years. But then when I had my children, I decided to set up Mindful Mortgages, really to focus more on the homes, not just the mortgages. And it all started because I think mortgages instantly create a vision of interest rates and costs and fees and criteria. And that's not what it's about. So I wanted to create something that put the home at the centre.
Love that. Especially since I recently bought my own home, and it was a very interesting journey. But yeah, once you get into the house, you realize that it's so much more than the numbers and filling out forms and getting pre-approved and all of that, which seems to be the main focus when you're thinking about buying a property.
Exactly. And that's all important too, but you can balance it out. And I think forgetting that the house is the centre of it is just a backwards way to do it. Like, really, you don't wake up one day and actually think, oh, I really need to get myself a mortgage. Like, I really want one. It's not, you think of the home and you want to either, change or have your first property. So I think starting with that and then building what do we need and how to get you there, it feels more aligned for me to do it that way for myself.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I know, as you've said, people don't wake up in the morning and think I need to get a mortgage. It's more about I need to get a house, but we need the mortgage to get the property. So in your definition, what is a mortgage?
So when I very first started, as part of my exams, we had to actually look at the Latin term, and it means a death pledge if you break the word down, which I found really scary. But when I looked at why, it's because they used to have them for years and years to come. I mean, in simple terms nowadays, a mortgage is just a loan. So someone, generally banks and building societies, lend the money that is used specifically to buy that property. And the reason it's different from a normal loan is because they actually have the property itself as security. So if for any reason they're struggling to get the money back, maybe you're not paying it for whatever reason, they know that they can sell the property to get their money back. So it's a security for them. And that's all it is really. It's a way of borrowing. It's a little bit different to sort of credit cards and loans because of the way that it's set up. And you take it obviously for most of the time a few years longer than the mortgages, there's sort of loans and things. And there's so many different types out there that I try to steer away from too much of the nitty-gritty mortgage talk and really focus on an individual. So depending on where they are in the journey, what they need at that time, we then look into the different types of mortgages, because otherwise it just becomes jargon and it becomes very cold and it moves away from the house.
Yeah.
But whether it's your first house or your moving house, it could be your 50th property. A lot of people have second properties, whether it's a holiday home or a buy-to-let. There's so many different ways to do it. And then someone like me, who's a mortgage advisor or a mortgage broker, we can help with all of the different types of mortgages and their criteria. And so it's just trying to keep it sort of simple and keep coming back to what the purpose is, what's the goal, what's the reason behind that, and then finding the best way to get you there.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a really good way of thinking about how to get a mortgage. Don't think about the type of mortgage, because I think a lot of people focus on that. Is it going to be a buy-to-let, or do I go for help to buy, or interest only, or repayment mortgage? Which then, already just by saying it, I'm getting confused.
Yeah, and
just by listing them out.
It's important not to reduce that. It's obviously really super important and we need to understand it. And that's our job. Your job when you're looking for your home isn't to necessarily have to come fully prepared. We explore the options. And I do think just trusting someone is the biggest thing really, because we're looking after generally hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
So you need to have the relationship there to know that someone who's looking after you is going to know all of this, explain it to you in your terms, not just, even when I start talking, it comes out and it just starts being jargony. But you need to know that you're going to understand it, of course, and it will all be taken care of. But just keep thinking of it as kind of like a safety net. They're going to sort of guide you all through to get you where you need to get to, as well as in the smoothest way and the less stressful, all those added extras as well.
Yeah, sure. So in your opinion, what would you say people should have in place before applying for a mortgage so they can get that property that they're hoping to buy?
What an amazing question. I wish everyone thought like that. Well, so I do think the team is probably where I always start with people. I think if you're on your own, all of a sudden it's daunting and it's overwhelming. So planning ahead and thinking, who do you want to be there along your side to guide you? So there's people like estate agents, solicitors, accountants, mortgage advisors, maybe builders if you're buying a new property. And it's important to pick them carefully because you're going to have a lot to do with them and potentially for quite a long time. But getting the team in place, and half of that will then involve planning ahead, because they'll be able to guide you and tell you what needs doing when, what you need to start planning for now, even if it's in months or years, really. And when you speak to these professionals, they can tell you the added extra tips that we pick up along the way. I mean, there's quite a lot of things that we can do in practical terms, things like getting our credit files all in order. A lot of people worry about that. And I feel as if that's something that you can hear it in someone's voice. Oh, what does it mean? How does it work? What do I need to do? It's not very good. And actually, getting an understanding of it right at the beginning can just help you make a few tweaks or understand if it's okay or if you need to make changes. It's simple things like getting on the electoral roll helps your credit file. And that's not necessarily what you would assume at the beginning. And probably really just having someone to look through and tell you all the ways that you can get in the best position possible, as well as things like factoring in what savings you have or what you need. So all of these just form part of a plan that is kind of like stepping stones. You need to do one to get to the next one, really. And alongside savings, a lot of people also say, well, do I need to pay down my debts or pay off my debts as well as saving? And I think every person and every journey is so unique. What one answer might be for someone isn't the same for everyone else. So something like this, you can't just give 10 top tips, do this, because that might not actually be the same for the next person that's listening. So I definitely feel having these conversations and exploring the options is what I would say is the first thing to do before you start applying, and actually before you even find a house, way before all of that.
Yeah, I hear you. And I learned that lesson when I was looking for my property. I thought, oh, let me wait until I've got all my ducks in a row. And then I thought, actually, I don't even know what I should be doing. So actually just going and looking at houses and speaking to the salespeople and then understanding what they were expecting. They were talking about being pre-approved, talking to a mortgage advisor, which then I spoke to so many mortgage advisors at the time when I was now ready to buy. I remember the one that they recommended to me. I actually thought I hadn't contacted them, and they were like, "We've got your email address in the system already." I was like, "Oh my goodness." But I think just starting early and understanding that your situation will be different to somebody else's and just getting the information from the professionals based on your circumstances is really important.
Well, what you just said then about potentially speaking to a few people, so speaking to a few estate agents, a few solicitors, a few builders, a few mortgage advisors, because actually you will get different information and you will pick different things, and you might click with someone better than something else because it's more than just the mortgage. It's, the trust and you want to get on and like have a nice time. You don't want to work with someone that is not going to be quite aligned to your approach.
Yeah.
All of those things. And we do learn from hindsight, don't we? We all do. We all look back and think we should have done something else. But if I can help people do that right at the beginning, then that definitely helps them.
Yeah, no, absolutely love that and totally agree. So what are some of the pitfalls that people find themselves in when it comes to managing their mortgage? After they've got the mortgage, they're now in the house.
Oh, yeah, interesting question, actually. So looking back, I would imagine that most clients would look at getting the house and thinking that's it, done. Mortgage ticked, but it's an ongoing commitment. So years and years ago, we would used to take a mortgage out and probably stay with the same bank for 25 years, just pay the payments, and that would be it, job done. But nowadays, there's so much more to it. You need to keep reviewing your situation and keep reviewing the interest rates and just keep an eye on it. And I don't think everyone knows that still. I assume that they do, but there definitely needs to be more education because otherwise, potentially not still the most suitable or cost effective. And it's a lot of money to borrow, so that cost adds up. So definitely a pitfall of not reviewing as often as you should. And I probably recommend just look at it once a year, see what it's doing, and sort of check if you need to do anything. But at least when your rate's coming to an end. So whenever you bought your property, I'd imagine you took a mortgage that had like a 2 or 3 year rate, or maybe a 5 year. So a good 6 months before that, you want to be thinking ahead and planning ahead, because if you wait until the last minute, there's a chance that your payments are going to go up and start costing you more, but you can do it sooner. So that's probably the most common sort of once they've got a mortgage. I was thinking as well about sort of the pitfalls before. There's a few things sort of like in the journey along the way.
Okay.
I think, again, to be honest with you, it just goes back to the individuals. And what I love about how we work is we would just keep in touch with someone. So once we've done the mortgage, I try to ring every year just to check in and see how you're going and what you're doing, because family situations change, finances change, COVID comes along and ruins our plans. And I think if it was a credit card, you would probably review it more often than you do your mortgage, but obviously it's a bigger debt. So I'd imagine that's probably the main one, is just reviewing the sort of the ongoing options. Trying to think if there's something else that's sort of more common once you've got it. Did you have anything in mind when you thought about it?
No, not really. I mean, it's I'm new on the journey as well. So in that phase where I need to be mindful of when the term of the initial mortgage ends, and making sure that I am ahead of that and speaking to a mortgage advisor before that comes to an end so we can get a good rate. But I guess the thing is, when you're in the house, there's so much to do, whether it's a new build.
Yeah, I think I always surprise people when I ring and say it's time to review your mortgage. They're always like, gosh, it can't have been 2 years already. And I think as well, maybe the pitfall is the wrong word, but maybe something else that we all intend to do and perhaps don't as often as we want to, is we think, oh, we'll save up some money to like overpay or to reduce the mortgage in a couple of years. And there's so many different things with our finances and lives that it becomes another thing that perhaps we could do and we don't do. And again, everyone's just so unique. It's hard to put a plan in place to say what someone should do. But we generally find that people would just call and say, oh, what do I need to do in this situation? I've got some money that I want to pay off. or the other way around, want to borrow a little bit more for whatever reason, to furnish the house or extend, or perhaps we've had a change in circumstances. I do like the fact that it is so varied. Every single day, every conversation is completely different. I mean, I've been 20 years doing this, and even if two clients look exactly the same, same demographics, same sort of like finances and amounts, I can absolutely guarantee there'll be completely different outcomes, completely different advice. It has to be so bespoke. And then it's holistic as well. It's not just looking at the fact find. Like when we both do it, don't we? If we get all the data, it's not just about that. There's so much more to it. And I think that's probably a pitfall that I see in the industry, not just going that extra little mile. So for me, it's really important to know the clients, not just on the facts and figures and the numbers. They're an actual person. Remember, at the end of the phone, that is an actual human being, that there's more to them than that.
Yeah, so true. And actually, that leads me to another question about how do you support your clients to help them get the home that they desire?
Yeah, I think a lot of this comes with experience, and it really helped being an estate agent at the beginning to have just a variety of knowledge on all the extras that come together. I mean, really, we definitely see it as a journey. What I'm trying to say to people, as soon as you have that moment's thought where you think about buying a new house or moving or buying a property, that's when I want to connect with you. That's the point that is perfect for me to get to know you. And then we can take you through, not just until you get the keys to the house, but looking after you from there. And sort of, I've probably had some clients for 20 years now from when I very first started, which is such a privilege and it's such an honour. So yeah, definitely the journey. And kind of as the name suggests, I hope, I put a lot of effort into trying to come across why we're different. So mindful mortgages, we really do put that extra emphasis on the emotions, and we listen and we support, and the guidance is really key, because I think really in reality, all mortgage advisors should do the same sort of job. It might well be that it takes different amounts of time, or you perhaps get a slightly different mortgage, but really that part of it shouldn't be too different. So it's just the approach. And we like to say that we offer handheld, because we do everything for you, heartfelt, because we really do care, like genuinely. I smile every time someone gets the keys to their new house. And then we're mindful, just because there's so much to it. It's almost hard to sum it up, but every time someone needs us, we're on the end of the phone. So we can't take away the stress. I wish we could. I wish we had a magic wand. Honestly, like I can't even promise that we'll make it super, super easy and simple, because it's not that. But when there are the ups and downs and you need someone to ask, we're there for all of that. And like I said before, it's really focusing on the home and the roller coaster of it all, because it's not just the mortgage either. It's life happens, doesn't it? Life changes and we hit forks in the road or just unpredictable circumstances. So the support of always being there and knowing that they can come back to us. I mean, we see it all really. We actually recently have seen quite a lot of changes that perhaps would never have been envisaged when you first did the mortgage for someone. So just being there for them and supporting that. I mean, on a practical side with the mortgage, we obviously do all of the research. We arrange it all. We take care of all of the paperwork and speak to the solicitors. And again, I don't want to underplay that is so important what we do with the professional advice, and we make sure that it is the best mortgage. But it's just balancing both. So you can have a professional mortgage with experienced mortgage advisors with all the wisdom on their mortgage, but they can also actually care and offer that helping hand along the way, along the lifetime relationship. Because otherwise you just get into a sense of kind of feeling sold to. So yes, we offer home insurance, and yes, we can put you in touch with solicitors and make sure that you've got the life insurance you need. But when you start talking about that level of support, it just suddenly loses its warmth. And I can feel myself, I completely value all of those added extras, and we definitely need more conversations about ways to protect our future finances. But you can only do that once you've got a connection with a client. You can't just go straight in and say, you need these because they're great. We have to know the client and really understand actually what's going to bring them the peace of mind and the value. And that is all support. But I think perhaps it's just how it comes across, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely it does. It does. And as you were talking, and you also alluded to this earlier, circumstances change. They might impact your ability to manage the mortgage. So what would you say to someone who's listening right now where, their circumstances have changed, maybe due to the COVID pandemic or just life happening. What would you say they should be either thinking about, or who should they be reaching out to in that scenario?
Yeah, I think we're all going to have times like that, and whether we've had them already or it's going to come, and we're never going to know. So you can't plan for everything before. I mean, there's obviously certain things that you can do ahead of time to put things in place, like safety nets. But yeah, generally, depending on what's happening, I love the sort of the journey of the client. So we see, first time buyers, and we see them go through all the different life stages. But as part of that, we often see people that are being separated or perhaps losing their jobs. Because we look after so many people, we obviously also see people that do get critically ill and struggle with their mortgage, or perhaps they're poorly for a long time. So it's sometimes bittersweet, because we know we put things in place to help them, but then seeing that actually people do need it, it's quite a difficult time for us. And actually over the years, we've sadly lost a few clients that you perhaps put life insurance in place and you're sort of grateful that they've had the cover, but you just didn't want them to actually have to use it. So yeah, we see change of circumstances all the time, and like the last couple of years have shown us, we're never going to know, and you can't plan for a pandemic. So reaching out is really dependent on that. And I know a lot of sort of connected professionals like we do. So depending on what's happening, generally it will be the same sorts of people that we mentioned earlier. So solicitors, accountants, financial planners. There's so much available at the minute. And I think that's the great thing of these sorts of communities, and you connecting all of the people together. I generally say to someone, come here, and if I don't know someone, I'll know someone who knows someone. So maybe if you've just got a good couple of contacts that you can rely on, they'll be able to sort of put you in touch with the right people. And again, finding the right personalities, because it's not necessarily just a mortgage advisor you need, or just a solicitor. And there's so many out there. It's finding those ones that are right for you in a sort of a deeper way, not just what service they offer, especially when you're looking at sort of some quite serious. I've definitely been through a few things myself over the times. I sort of think, gosh, that would never have been on my radar. I would never ever have thought that situation could well have happened. But also we choose situations, don't we? Like we sometimes choose to create a new company or business, or travel the world for a year, or anything that actually is also positive. So it's not always doom and gloom.
That's true.
We do also get people ring and say, oh, I want to do X, Y, Z, or start a family, or there's so much else that you also need to perhaps plan for that once you know that it's coming, even though you perhaps didn't expect it. And I saw that when I set up my own company a few years ago. You sort of, sometimes it happens really quickly, and you just think, oh gosh, actually this time last year I had no idea where I'd be. But that's also good as well.
Yeah, I love that. And it goes back to what you were saying, about the mortgage journey for an individual right at the beginning. Build your team, get those trusted advisors in place, so that when things happen, whether it's good or a bit negative, you can call on them and they'll know someone. Yeah, I get people contacting me, asking, do I know, can I do X for them? And I'm like, no, I'm not qualified to do that, but here's an email address, or look up this person.
I think I did that a week ago, didn't I?
Yes, exactly. So within our own networks, we have got people who can support our clients when things happen.
Yeah, and it's lovely to be able to do that. It's so great to be able to offer people those solutions and trusted connections with other people, because the other thing is, we can't as professionals do it all. Like we can't be your accountant and your sister and your, we need to focus on the things that we're best at. But yeah, it's all about the connections.
100%. One question that comes up a lot when people are talking about mortgages is, especially when it's the first mortgage, early repayments. Are they good? Are they bad? I think I know what you're going to say, but I just thought I'd put it out there since we're talking about mortgages. What are your thoughts on early repayments?
So do you mean if you pay the mortgage off and you get charged the early repayment, or paying extra?
Well, paying extra to try and reduce that, because there is this thought that 25 years is so long, and people are trying to reduce that. And yes, there are penalties to doing that, but and on the other hand, there are people who say if you add a little bit every month, it helps to reduce the time frame. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I think that's a really interesting point as well, because just alluding to the sort of jargon conversation that we've just mentioned. So early repayments and overpayments and early repayment charges, there's so much in the mortgage world that actually gets really confusing about even what was actually meaning about it. But yeah, paying extra off your mortgage early, so an overpayment technically in most of the terms, in a financial sense, as a purely financial advisor, it is definitely a really great thing to consider doing, because we get charged interest on the amount that we owe. So by paying some off, you're going to be charged less, which in simplistic terms is a great idea. But there is more to consider, because the interest rates are quite low at the minute. So it depends what your other options are for sort of what you want to do with those funds. And again, I really feel like it is such a cop-out answer, but we're all so unique, because we all need to have different amounts available that we perhaps want in our savings for different emergency funds. So someone might be happy with £5,000, but someone else might need £50,000. So depending on sort of what our own situation is, and the bigger picture as well, like other investments, other properties, there's so much more than just that. So I feel like every time I start to talk about mortgage, I always sort of say, well, it depends on the person, but yeah, it's definitely worth doing as long as you've got your emergency pot and depending on your other things. I also think as well, with the reviewing, like we said, every few years, that gives you an opportunity to just be mindful of, oh, do I need to, should I, what's the best thing for me? And even if you don't do something every month, or if you don't do it regularly, sometimes the remortgage is an opportunity to sort of just reduce it down a little bit. And you might do it in two ways. You might want to pay a few £1,000s off the mortgage, or you might think, oh, I started the mortgage at 30 years and actually it's pretty affordable for me. I could bring those years down to say 28 years in a couple of years' time, and that then shortens the term. So it's all different ways of achieving the end goal, which ultimately will be to pay off the mortgage as soon as you can. I mean, it does get complicated because also there's a lot of stuff out there. It might be worth not paying the mortgage off earlier and using that money for different things, or increasing your property portfolio. It's we all have different intentions and we all have different levels of risk. We all have different ideas. Like for some people, it is so imperative important to not have any debt and have the house paid off, and that feeling and that emotion is a real goal to work towards. So that conversation with that person will be completely different. Whereas someone else, like someone I'm speaking to today, who's actually perhaps a little bit more risky, wants to build properties, build portfolios, really sort of do something else, overpaying might not be the right answer for them, because they might achieve their goal in a completely different way. So yeah, it's as always, never a straightforward answer.
I knew it when I asked it. But no, it's absolutely fine. And it is the truth and the reality that you may have different objectives to the next person. And even as couples, I mean, my husband is thinking about us buying more properties, and I'm like, let's just deal with this mortgage first.
One at a time. That's
it. So I'm the sort of like, let's put as much money to reducing this mortgage. And he's like, why don't we use the money we have to put into another property?
I think, like we've found before, so working together, you're exploring the mindset behind it, the reasons, the longer term things. That is just absolutely fascinating. And these are the bits that I actually love most about the role, because it isn't just a straightforward. It definitely gets the brain cells going, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So, Sam, what would you say to somebody listening to this episode who is thinking about getting a mortgage?
Oh, where to begin? That's a very big question. I think, like we've just said, like plan ahead early, speak to some people and start building your little network. Probably a bit of reassurance in the sense of it can feel overwhelming and daunting and like a huge thing, but just break it down into steps and look at where you are now and try and figure out the next couple of things that you need to do. Definitely sooner rather than later is probably the key takeaway. As soon as you think about it, start there. Don't wait, which is, again, easier said than done. Or give me a call. That's probably the truth. Let's start there.
Yeah, it will make it much easier. Yeah, you'll probably get to your final goal quicker.
Yeah, well, it sometimes does work like that, just because you can sort of shortcut a few things and you don't have to backtrack. So yeah. Possibly.
Yeah. And I think having an advisor on your team just helps you to focus on the right areas at the right time. As you said, a lot of people will be looking, thinking about their credit rating and worrying about that. But if they speak to someone about it, they might say, actually, you've got no issues. Or actually, why don't you take these steps to improve your credit rating?
Definitely. We very often find we'll do kind of an accountability type thing. So almost it's someone else to check in with, it's someone else to sort of keep on track and feedback and keep reviewing, because we know what it's like. It's almost like a life admin thing, isn't it? It's another thing to do. And we've already all snowed under with, kids and pets and work and who knows what. So yeah, definitely for that side. And I think it's nice to start sharing that journey with someone right from the beginning, because then when it does all happen, you can kind of look back and see how far you've come.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. Oh, thank you so much, Sam, for sharing everything you know about mortgages.
I'm sure we can talk for hours.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But as you say, it is actually quite complex and it depends on the individual. So in this sort of setting, it has to be quite a generic conversation. Otherwise, we'll start confusing people.
That's the last thing that we want to start to do in an area where it is already so confusing. It's trying to keep it as simple as possible without downplaying it.
Yeah. I mean, I work in financial services. I've been in the industry for 14 years now, and mortgages are not my thing. It's not my area of expertise. This is why I needed to get an advisor on my side, because and I think just understanding that you know what you know and let the professionals help you with the rest.
Completely.
Super important. Yeah. Well, Sam, as you know, I believe that to create true wealth, we must all be clear on what wealth means to us in each area of our life. And I call these the Wealth Cornerstones. So in a few words, please, could you share with us what wealth means to you in terms of your physical, mental, spiritual, social, and financial well-being?
Yeah, so I love the fact that it is a true wealth, because there is unfortunately sometimes the association that wealth just means pound signs and how much money is in your bank account. And I think, this is a topic I could talk about for hours and hours, but I think really life for me has shown me that there is so much more than just the finances. And when I've had the challenges, so I've had a physical challenge in the sense that I lost my hearing. And I think you have a few moments in life where you sort of have that chance to reflect, and you have that chance to think, oh, what does my health mean to me? What does it sort of affect my life? And then there's a sense of either gratitude or struggle at the time. But for me, I've always had a challenge in certain things and then come out the other side and actually realise there was a lesson in that. So whether it be physical or mental, the last few years have obviously been a real struggle for many people, but we're starting to come out of it. And it's almost as if we need the highs and lows, we need the black and white, the yin and yang to balance out. So for me, for everything was sort of like well-being, every time I sort of think, what does it mean to me? I don't think it's almost having that perfect answer and that goal to come through. I, as an individual, quite like the good and bad, the light and dark, because I think that's what life is for me. It's kind of the journey of experience, and it doesn't always just want to be easy. And I don't just want to be wealthy in all of these areas of my life. I don't want to have a huge bank account, be super organized, and just have everything all in place, because for me at the minute, that isn't what it's all about. It'd be nice to get there one day, but yeah, I'm actually enjoying sort of building up to that and enjoying the ride, and trying to be grateful as much as I can for everything that I've got already and just how far I've come. Sometimes you look back, don't you, and you think, gosh, a couple of years ago, like I didn't know this is where I was going to be, as much as I might have some sort of plan. But with spiritual sort of well-being, I do try to do as much exploration as I can, and just, I think development's almost a word that we say a lot, isn't it? Self-development. But for me, it's just keeping open-minded and constantly thinking of different things in different ways, not falling into a rut, just so that I can feel as if I'm growing. Like I want to feel as if I'm getting somewhere with my own life's work. And it's not just about the job. It's not just about being a parent. It's trying to have more, and it's trying to understand more on topics that I have no idea about, that actually are really important, and people that are in the world that I can learn from that are important. And all these things, as well as like balancing, there's almost so much, isn't there, with well-being, but balancing the health side of things and trying to improve that, which is a constant journey. I just think working towards constantly trying to be a better person, and then that ticks the wealth for me for everything. I feel almost like I'm becoming wealthier in the sense of a richer person, and that's what I would just say. I feel like I've really sort of been on that path the last few years. So yeah, nice to have a question like that to almost reflect and look back, but definitely it's more than the pound signs.
Love that. Yeah, so much more than money, definitely. How can anyone listening to this episode get in touch with you if they would like to explore getting a mortgage for the property of their dreams?
Yeah, of course. I would love to connect with everyone listening. And I'm really sociable, so you can find me in most places, but the best place that has all of the information about what we do, how we work, and all of our social links is just on our website, which is mindfulmortgages.co.uk, and everything's on there. But yeah, feel free to look me up in any of the places, and I would love to connect with any of your listeners.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sam. And thank you for being so open to share what you know. It's been great having you on the podcast. If my listeners want a bit more detail on different types of mortgages, I will be contacting you to come back onto the podcast.
Please, I would be honoured. It's so nice to chat with you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Connect with me at The Wealth Conversation on Facebook and Instagram so we can continue the discussion. Also, if you enjoy tuning into this podcast, make sure to leave a rating and review everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Until next week, stay focused on becoming the designer of your financial future.